Welcome to Bellwether. Thank you for joining this week. We have a phenomenal guest. If you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you know that, just last week I had the big shtick on wellness, and we reorganize wellness. We talk about wellness all the time, and wellness has these different components. One of the frustrating things I have with talking about wellness is there's a lot about the what needs to happen, less on the how. And I always like to bring in experts to talk about these types of things. And I do a lot of work in the background. You don't necessarily see it. You see it when they come on, but we find the really good people that are going to give you really good knowledge. And that's what we're going to do today. A lot of people, when we talk about physical wellness, you talk about your diet, your fitness, your sleep. And if you read the book, we talked about how much what you eat impacts your ability to think about things and your cognitive ability. And there's this kind of big whole circle of everything that we want to talk about. Today, I brought in an integrative nutritionist. She's brilliant. She knows exactly everything that we want to learn, because nutrition is such a big topic. And it's so big, it's so confusing. Everybody seems to be an expert when they're not. They have little context as to what you need, and we get confused trying to find whatever the fad diet is, or I want a short-term thing. And so let's just cut the BS and let's get to an expert. And that's why we have Marissa Winters here. So Marissa, thank you for joining us on Bellwether Hub. Please tell us about yourself, and then let's get right into it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I am an integrative nutritionist. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I have a master's in holistic health from Georgian Court in good old Lakewood, New Jersey. And I'm also a board certified health and wellness coach. Right now I'm working with Hackensack Meridian Integrative Health and Wellness. So I do have a clinical practice with that group, which is an amazing learning experience, terrific bunch of people, a wonderful team. And I also do a lot of work with the Center for Conscious Caregiving, which is more of the coaching end of it.
Excellent. And so this being, I should have just said, we're kicking this off in National Nutrition Month.
It is.
So this is, the perfect time to have this discussion.
Right.
What I like about you and what we've talked about before we actually recorded this, is there's a balance between what's factual, good information regarding nutrition, but then also the coaching people on how to get there. So talk to me a little bit about, you say it's ultimately about self-care, but give me a little bit of your philosophy on nutrition and how we should be thinking about nutrition and getting our heads in the right place before we really talk about the hows and everything else.
It's a great segue in. I think what has happened, and where a lot of the noise and the confusion comes in, is that over the last, 20 years maybe, probably a little bit longer, most of the nutrition research has focused on individual nutrients. It's all about vitamin D or whatever the nutrient of the day is, right? And the reality is that reductionist way of looking at things doesn't necessarily serve us. It's great for the science aspect, but we eat food. So we tend to think of things when we read about nutrition, 10 power foods that will change your life and all that stuff. And let's face it, it's not that simple. You're eating food and you're putting it into a system. So I always look at it like, the body, instead of being a mechanistic type of paradigm, right? So let's just say, like, I hurt my shoulder, so now I go get my shoulder repaired. I have clogged arteries in my heart, and so now I have a workaround. I can get a bypass, right? In reality, we're not machines. We're more like gardens. And that's how I kind of propose it to a lot of my patients, is you've got to look at the whole thing. So you can't just look at an individual nutrient and then target the foods that provide that nutrient, because what we know also is that eating patterns are really the thing that create health and well-being in people. It's not that, your macros are aligned. It's that you're eating food that is nourishing. You're eating a complement, a variety, a balance. You're giving yourself nutrients together, because we know there's a synergistic effect in nutrients, right? So if you eat something orange with something green, it's going to work better. So 2 + 2 = 5. So it's shifting more into the mindset of, how am I going to take care of myself, and what's the broader picture? Like, pull back the lens a little bit versus focusing so much on the nuts and bolts and getting it right. And
I like and I don't like the garden analogy. I like the garden analogy because what people don't realize is that a garden doesn't just happen when you plant the seeds. It happens throughout the year, even in the off season and everything else. What I don't like about that analogy is I tried to do that with my daughter, and it was an absolute disaster. So figuring out the garden is, and maybe that's my segue into the question, is how much do we have to learn in terms of figuring out these things that pair well together? You said the orange and the green pairing well is really good. Figuring out the nutrients that we actually need. How much education is there? Is there a shortcut that people can take? Is there, because the macro thing is confusing for some people, right? What's really a carb versus, you got your carbs, your proteins, all of these different things. And are you looking at your macros, and people, then they're counting their calories, but how do calories relate to macros? And so there's a process to it, and it's frustrating. So where do you begin to educate yourself to find out what's best for you?
so first, you stop trying so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are 1,000 ways to get it right. It's really a matter of eating food. And this has become a very popular mantra. And I really like Michael Pollan with his little mantra about eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Those are really simple things. The point with the garden is that it's all interrelated, and there are seasons. There are times where you're going to be craving salads, and there are going to be times where you're just done with salads and you want something warming. Okay, so
Irish stew, a good Irish stew.
A good Irish Guinness stew. This is the month for it. Absolutely, absolutely. And it's acknowledging that and recognizing that, because your body is giving you messages all the time. It's just we're not really paying a whole lot of attention, or we're trying to whip it into submission or force it into doing something and deferring our own body's wisdom and needs to some expert, right? And so it really is quite simple. Eat food, not a food-like substance. Eat something that looks the way it's found in nature. So an apple versus applesauce versus apple chips, right? So there's different levels of processing, and not all of them are bad, but really it boils down to common sense to a large extent too. Like, that those potato chips are not the same as a potato. Come on, like, be honest. But
they do taste better. They taste better.
They taste good in certain circumstances, and there's no reason why you can't have them, right? So again, it's just, what do you want to do with yourself?
Yeah.
What are you feeding, I guess, is really the key question. Are you feeding well-being? Are you feeding a heartbreak? Are you feeding a frustrating day? What are you feeding? And is it working? Right? So I guess there's a ton of shortcuts. None of them are actually going to be sustainable.
Well, it sounds like a lot of it is more of a psychological, the way that you've just presented it is, what are you feeding? It's almost, why do you eat? Right? What is nourishment? And some people think about it as fuel for, your machine. Other people would say it's just nourishment so that you could do the things you want to do. Is this more of a learning process for people to reframe how they think about food, which sounds kind of silly when you think about it. Why do you eat food? It's not just to live, but it serves a purpose for you to do other things. Is that how we should be thinking about food and nutrition and nourishment and all of the other good words?
I honestly think that we have a lack of mindfulness right now. And there is a place for it in everything we do. And that doesn't mean that you have to, agonize over what's the best thing and chew your food 50 times and all that stuff. But it is, I think, important, and I think it is serving to each person to figure out, what is it that I am trying to get? Because sometimes food is fuel. I mean, it's always fuel. It's also information. It tells your cells what to do, right? It has a whole gamut of potential. So if you're just grabbing something because you're so hungry you can't even think straight, then you're just filling the hole and you're not going to make a good decision. So you're not going to support your well-being. So I think it's really important to start out at the beginning of the day. What is it that I need to accomplish? What is it that I am trying to get to? How do I want to feel? It always boils down to how do I want to feel, because that's what sets your intention. Okay. And so if I know that I have a day that's going to go off the rails potentially because I have patients that are stacked up and then I have home responsibilities and all that stuff, I have to be able to say, okay, I need to optimize what I'm giving myself. I need to build in the time so that as I consume it, it's being done, digested in a way that is able to access the nutrients that I'm giving myself, right? Because if we're eating in the car, or if we're eating while we're working, or if we're eating while watching the news, if you're not eating in a relaxed state, you are not digesting that food. It is not being utilized the way you think it is, because digestion is a function of a relaxed state. So, and this is kind of like taking this topic off in a little bit.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, when I think about intentionality, is all about individual focus. It's about the inner dialogue. It's about what do I need now? It's about being in control of yourself. And a lot of what we talk about on the podcast and everything else is you're ultimately responsible for the bed you lie in, right? Whatever it is. And that's right. It. And we need to sometimes revisit the way we're having these types of conversations with ourselves. What do I actually need? And why am I doing what I'm doing? And where we're going to be in 6 months is a result of the decisions we're making today. And that's all, intentionally what nourishes me. And that answer could be different for anybody.
Exactly. And at different times. There's a time where those potato chips, those are fine. That brownie, it's fine. But it's
very
an 80-20 or a 90-10. But that's where that question comes in then. What am I feeding? Right. If I'm going for the brownie and I'm not paying attention to why I want this brownie, I just see it and I want it because it's been a really long day and, everything went wrong and that person yelled at me and I missed my deadline and blah, 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 whatever that story is. And then you see that brownie and that brownie is like
comfort,
sweetness. It's some sweetness now. And then you eat the brownie and you're doing it standing up over the sink or over the garbage pail, right?
I feel like you're in our kitchen watching me at like 9 o'clock at night.
I'm in my kitchen. This is not abnormal. This is why I have a job. So, it really boils down to taking that pause and saying, okay, what am I feeding? And if the brownie is what's going to nourish your soul right now, then put the damn thing on a plate, sit down and savor that brownie. And then you're not going to regret it. But if you are just stuffing your emotions, we call it.
Yeah.
Right? So you're just covering them over with food. That's not going to get you where you want to go. That's going to start the whole, I can't believe I did that. Why do I do that? And you start the whole story thing and you wind up shooting yourself in the foot. So being able to take a pause, being able to just take that moment, where am I right now? Am I in a stress state? Because if I'm eating in a stress state, that's not going to end well.
Right.
So, it really is more complex and yet simple.
So but it's also hard, right? So if we were to think about,
it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's very simple, but it may
it's not easy.
So how do you do that? Right? Because you know what, in theory, as I look at that plate of brownies, you say, you know what? I know I'm going to eat brownies, right? There's just no way I'm not going to do it. I shouldn't try to pretend it and then I'm going to regret and I'm going to hate, all of those things. So I love the idea of, I'm going to own this brownie, sit down at the table, I'm going to eat this brownie, I'm going to enjoy this brownie. is that, I mean, is that a strategy that works for people? Is there something else to kind of change the mentality? How, or you could just shove it in your mouth and be like, yeah, I ate the brownie. So it's hard to be intentional sometimes.
Yeah.
But maybe the question is, when you're in a stressed state, it's extremely difficult to be intentional. Right?
For sure.
What it is, beyond just food. You're stressed at work, it's difficult to be intentional with just sending a proper email. When you're stressed at home, it's difficult to be intentional with the kids. It's difficult to do all of these things. How do we coach people to be intentional when they're in that stressed moment, brownie in hand, on the precipice of regret? How do we get people to just do that pause? Is there a strategy for that?
There's a bunch of strategies for it, but I think part of it is the beauty of mindset. And you actually hit on something perfectly, because when you're in that stress state, you know that the frontal lobes go off, that critical thinking goes off, that strategizing goes off, and you are in a reactive state. One of the simplest ways to get yourself off or back away from the precipice is using breath. So I will tell my patients, and I'll tell my clients, if you can get yourself into a deep breath for around 1, 2, 3 minutes, right? If you can activate the vagus nerve, if you can bring yourself down off that edge, right? That can be very helpful in starting to shift that tide. Then you can actually make a choice versus react to a situation, right? The other thing, like there are a lot of little techniques. We use emotional freedom technique, which is also known as tapping. Okay. That can be super helpful in bringing down the charge from the emotions in the body, right? So that can be helpful. I'll teach people tapping. It's super easy to learn. Right now there's a Tapping World Summit. You can find a bunch of videos on YouTube for it. It's got excellent research backing it up. Works quite well with taking people down off the edge. But the thing that I'll always stress to my patients and my clients is to get very, very clear on what you want. Because, and you never want what you think you want, right? You always want a feeling. We think that if I lose the 10 pounds, or if I get the car, or if I have the job, or whatever it is, that's what's, I want that, I'll feel better, my life will come into alignment, right? And for me in the health and wellness field, a lot of it has to do with body image and weight. Mm-hmm. So if I have this weight, or if I can, get shredded or whatever, right? Then things are going to be okay. So you're hooking your wagon to the wrong thing, because it's not that external desire, that condition. It's really the feeling that you're trying to get to. So I'm trying to feel comfortable in my clothes. I'm trying to feel energetic. I'm trying to feel worthy or attractive or whatever. It takes work to get to that space. That's deep stuff. But when we get there, when you have a very clear picture of the quality of life that you want to embody, that becomes very motivating. And then it becomes much simpler to say, well, is this going to bring me closer, or is this going to pull me away? Right? And so I tell people, do a vision board, write it down, get very clear on what you want, and then smack it all over your house. Stick it on your mirror, put it on your phone, stick it on the fridge, slap it on the pan of brownies. Yeah. Because that's going to give you a little bump. And you're going to say, like, okay, wait. And when you're really on the edge and you really, really, really need the brownie, my favorite trick is the 3-bite rule. Because research has shown that the first 3 bites of any food are the most pleasurable. So you've got like a diminishing marginal returns going down, right? And so if that brownie is screaming your name, then have the brownie, but portion out 3 bites of it. And again, sit down, savor every bite, and then have a nice drink of water, and you're done. Because now you've maximized your pleasure. 3 bites of anything. And, we're talking like 3 bites. We're not talking 3 bites.
Well, that's where my head was going.
Yeah, I know.
I can take a good bite. I like what you said there about, a lot of these things, and we'll talk about weight loss. When you talk about nutrition, you have to talk about weight loss, because I feel like that's why most people would probably tune into this is, I want to lose a couple of pounds here. I want to do that. Can't keep it off, right? It's this kind of cycle of ongoing. And the question of why do you actually want to lose the weight, right? I want to look better without a shirt at the beach. Well, that doesn't actually matter because you're dealing with an insecurity. So losing the weight doesn't actually address the internal. You're looking for external validation on something internally that you need to figure out. Is this the same with nutrition? I mean, how do we get people to really, they're right at their vision board and it's all externally focused, intrinsically motivating kind of, I want people to like me better or desire me more or whatever that is. But ultimately, that's your responsibility, right? And it's not losing weight, but it's, how are you interacting with people? And it may not be your physical versioning of yourself, but how you actually treat people. How do you get people to think beyond, I just want to lose weight, into the why? And what's a good enough why?
Well, the good enough why is whatever's really going to motivate you, but that's something that I do a lot with the coaching practice, and there's a whole process that we use because it is not as easy as a one and done. That we're just built to self-sabotage because we don't like change, and once you start to initiate a change, everything starts to get in your way, right? The bottom line is what people really want is a quality of life. You're not solving a problem. You're bringing a quality of life into your life. So you're moving towards something you want rather than moving away from something you don't want. And this culture is very, very problem-solving oriented. We can fix this.
Right.
And it's not so much about fixing it as it is about creating what you want. So yes, you want to go to the beach and look good with your shirt off. Okay, why? Because I want to feel comfortable. I want to feel confident, right? Just what you were saying. Once you start to define that, then the vision board does not become external. It becomes more supportive of that internal state of being. And one thing that I do, that we do, is continually bring people back to that, right? Because it needs to be a reminder all the time, right? Because problem solving is a default setting. And if all you're doing is looking for problems to solve, you're going to find lots of problems to solve. That's fine. But the quality of your life then is not going to improve for any long-term sustainable way. So it's emphasizing that quality. And that quality is going to change over time. It's not like, oh, I'm going to be confident and then, okay, now we're static, because we're not static. We're never static. So it will be doing those things that allow you to know yourself as a confident person. Okay, so maybe that means that I lift weights because I know that when I have nice muscle definition, I feel better about myself, and that enhances my confidence. Maybe I increase my hydration. Maybe I start to go to bed at a reasonable hour so that I have enough sleep so that I'm not dragging my tail, 3 blocks behind the rest of me, trying to get up to speed. So it's defining that quality that you really, really want and choosing one, because we all have a bunch of them. So just choose one.
Got a laundry list.
What is it?
We've got a laundry list.
Right. But you don't need to do it all at once.
Right.
So pick one and then figure out what that's going to look like in your life. Okay.
And you become a different person once you make that change, and you're going to make different decisions at that point and everything else. Is that where most people, you think, go wrong when they're trying to lose weight? Is they don't really have the perspective on either how long it's going to take or what lifestyle change really means, or any of these, because I feel like, again, it's simple. It's all simple. We know what we're supposed to do, yet we just don't do it. We know what we want, but we just don't properly articulate it. Are these how do you commit to a lifestyle change and stay motivated in that lifestyle change? Because if you eat what you're supposed to eat, you're going to lose weight. Your body naturally figures it out, right? So it's not about this crash course thing, but it's an ongoing time how do you stay motivated to stick to say this was the right lifestyle choice and change that I've made, even though I'm not seeing immediate results? How long does it take? And I don't really, I mean, I guess it's different for everybody, of course, but how do you, I guess, keep perspective on a lifestyle change?
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of mindset, right? So if you've decided that I want this quality, this is how I want my life to look. And it's not just saying I want to be more confident. It's really fleshing out what that looks like, how I'll move through my day, what my relationships are going to consist of, right? Once that mindset's there, then you're going beyond the short term. And that's kind of, you're in the phase of the garden, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're starting to, and you may not see a result for a while. I have people all the time come in and, I've been doing this for 2 weeks. I've been doing this for 2 weeks and I've only lost a pound. It's like, dude, that's exactly what you should be doing. That's fine. That's perfect, because we really want that quick fix. And that's my signal that, okay, we need to really work on bringing you along. We need to work on, where the resistance is, where the obstacle is, what's getting in your way to shifting out of the problem solving, because now you're still in problem solving. You've just defaulted and it feels really comfortable and you probably don't even notice it because we're so used to problem solving. But in order to do a lifestyle change and make it sustainable, it's a longer vision, and it's having that vision. This is what my life is going to look like. So if you're going to climb Everest, you're not just going to, sit there and look at the peak. You got to look at what's exactly in front of you, and you're going to do each step, right? And we have to address then what's going to get in the way of each step, because there's resistances that you're going to put up, that we're all going to put up, because it's change and we know that. So it's being able to recognize it and strategize about it and figure out, well, this is where I'm tripping myself up, because it's not about eating less and working out harder all the time. Once you get to a certain point, it really isn't about just eating less. I have some people who don't understand why they're not losing weight, because they're not eating enough. Mm-hmm. Right? And so that works against you as well. And it becomes this panicky sense of, I can't get it. Or I get it, but it won't
right.
stick.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's the mindset of the longer term. What's the vision? What do you want for yourself? Where are you going?
I like the framing of, rather than moving away from something and moving towards something, right? I'm not moving away from being 300 pounds. I'm moving towards whatever it is that I've outlined that I actually want to go to. When we do that, no matter our best intentions, no matter our vision board, we get 5 days in, we get 2 weeks in, and we'll sabotage ourselves. Mm-hmm. Why do we do that?
That's what we call a resistance. And something will come up because it is a change. But again, it's a long-term thing. So why are we doing it? Well, there's probably a million reasons, because there's any number of possibilities that's your personal bugaboo, right? It's recognizing it for what it is, though. Maybe it's unprocessed emotions. Maybe it's terrible boundaries. Maybe it's like you really have a knowledge deficit about what you should be eating. Because that happens too. There is, as you mentioned in the very beginning, there's a lot of information out there, and everybody's an expert. Everybody's an expert because everybody eats, and everybody eats multiple times a day, right? And food processors have healthified things and put little health halos on things, and it's marketed well, and it sounds like it would make sense, and it does taste good. And anyway, so the bottom line is, though, that being able to recognize where you're hanging yourself up, where you're undermining yourself. Who's that little voice my favorite is the one that says, okay, now I've committed to make this change. I'll do it on Monday.
Right.
Right? Because you feel really good about that. Yeah. I've committed.
You've committed, but I'll do it later.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then Monday is the following Monday and the following Monday. And I can't even tell you how many Mondays have been before we started to make those changes. So I think part of what's helpful with it is having somebody like a coach, like someone who can help you say, you know, you're doing that thing you do, and maybe we ought to think about a different way, look for a different path. Because if this isn't working, and that means that you're going to have to make peace with the fact that you're going to be uncomfortable for a while.
Right. Right. There's no shortcut. It's not necessarily easy. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But that space is going to get you where you want to be. And you know where you want to be because you put the time in to really clarify and define it. And you've made it something real. And now you're taking that momentum. And when you hit those roadblocks, it often means that you're moving forward. Because if you're sitting still, you're not banging into any roadblocks. You're not noticing the obstacles that are just waiting to get you, right? That are waiting to be addressed, I should say, not get you. Okay? So that's also a sign that you are making progress. It's finding your best way up.
There was a saying when I was studying to be a coach where they said, if the client ain't lifting, the client ain't shifting. So if they're not doing the work, they're not moving. And that's
Exactly. I love it. I love it. That's great.
Now, as we hear it, you know, I guess people are going to take this and they're going to say yes, because everything you're saying is spot on, right? Which we knew was going to happen. We knew that was going to happen. And they're going to be motivated to start with something and say, you know what, maybe I'll write my vision board this weekend, or maybe I'll do this. Sometimes it's not about hearing the right things. It's also knowing what to ignore, right? So you know they're going to leave this, and then they're going to Google for other ideas, and they're going to go down into a rabbit hole. What advice do you have for people that are swinging from fad to fad, who want to just get started, who are jumping through to say, you know what, I'll drink this in the morning, and then I'll do this. And, you know, how do they have to just kind of create their profile and say anything that doesn't fit into this, shed it? Is there, you know, how do we know what to ignore in the context of so much noise?
Well, the first thing obviously is, like, if it sounds really, really good and easy, don't do it.
It's not going to be.
Stop right there. There's your red flag right there, right? There is a lot of noise. You're absolutely right. I think all of us kind of have an understanding, a basic common sense understanding. I will tell you that one of our rules, really, and we don't have many rules per se, but if it leaves out whole food groups, just walk away. Okay? We always are going to push, and by we, I mean the nutrition community, like trained nutritionists are always going to push whole foods, in other words, foods that look the way they're found in nature. We're going to push plant-forward eating. So the more plants on your plate, the better your health outcomes. Okay? So it really isn't all that specific for each person. I mean, there's a lot of research and a lot of emphasis now being spent on, it's called nutrigenomics, and it's like checking your DNA and we're not there yet. We're just not there yet. What we do know, though, is that people who eat a whole lot of plants, who eat monounsaturated fats, who eat healthy fats, not refined grains, not a whole lot of sugar, not a whole lot of things that have become quite popular in the last century, they have better health outcomes. So if you want to do Mediterranean, if you want to do DASH, if you want to do a MIND diet, the bottom line is more plants, less processed food. Start there. I'm going to throw you a curveball. I don't know if people ask you this, but we didn't talk about it. If I'm eating more plants, do I go organic or not? Doesn't matter. There's an awesome website called Environmental Working Group, which is ewg.org. And they publish a list every year of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And the Dirty Dozen are those 12 fruits and vegetables that have the most amount of pesticide residue on them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Clean 15 have the least amount of pesticide residue on them. So if you can, it's in your interest to buy organic versions of the Dirty Dozen and save your money. I mean, because nobody can really, and I do get this, like I can't shop at, these premium grocery stores all the time. Like I don't.
Because when you're picking your plants, right, it sounds great to do all that. It could get pricey very, very quickly in terms of, the berries and the kale and the carrots and do you do organic versus not? And all that stuff. It's difficult, but okay.
It is. But ultimately, I would always tell someone, even if you can't do anything organic, you are always going to be better off health-wise by using a plant-forward eating pattern. So when you emphasize plants, even if they're all conventionally raised, you're still going to be in a better place health-wise and nutrition-wise than if you just forego it and eat a bunch of processed food or, right? So it really is.
Non-organic lettuce is better than a dinner of yodels and Twinkies, is what you're telling me.
Oh, yeah. For sure. For sure. Or chicken nuggets and French fries.
Right.
So,
right. Yep. And I guess it ultimately comes down to we're making decisions in the moment. I guess this goes back to making good decisions despite your stress. But sometimes you're deciding what's the least bad thing I can eat right now, because that's kind of the environment we're in. We've got the ideal of what we'd like to eat at home and everything else, but we're on the road traveling or, traveling for work or picking up the kids, and you got to do things fast and the kids have to eat, and it's very easy to do a drive-through. And, what's the least bad thing in this moment? And then you can rally again for the next meal. But is that kind of a way to think? I guess, well, that's how I'd think about it anyway. But
well, part of the challenge I think that a lot of people face is that they don't think about eating until about 30 minutes before mealtime. And if you're hungry or if you're stressed, you're not going to make a good decision.
Right.
You're just not. So you can do damage control, and there are going to be situations where everybody needs to be in 4 different places within 15 minutes, and you just got to punt and hope for the best, right? But for a lot of people, spending a little bit of time planning the week and incorporating the meals into it, right? So you'll plan your week out, right? You know when your meetings are, and you know when your calls are, and I know when my patients are, and all that stuff. But I'm also needing to plan this day, everybody needs to be in some other place. So maybe I prep some food ahead of time. Maybe I cook 4 extra portions or 8 extra portions, right? Because I'm Italian, so I can cook a whole bunch of stuff. And
dozens of extra portions.
Right. That's not extra. That's just what we need. Right? So, but being able to kind of anticipate where is your biggest road bump. And that's also part of addressing the resistances and the obstacles of getting you where you want to be. Because I hear that a lot. I'm just too busy. Well, it really is a reflection of where's the priority. More than I'm too busy. It's just, this is either a priority or it's not a priority. If it's not a priority and you just can't pull it out to this week or this month or whatever, be honest about it. I can't do it right now. I need to spend my energy focused in this direction. I only have so much energy to spend, right? But there are apps that people can use. There are meal kits if you want to go down that route. Like, there are a number of ways to address meal prep, meal planning. Mm-hmm. And even being able to have the idea, have some thought of like, I'm going to have this tonight. I'm going to bring that tomorrow. It can just make your life significantly easier. It does decrease your stress. And you can then make a choice rather than default to doing the least amount of damage.
And I feel like taking the time to plan ends up buying you more time later because you're going to be more productive based on eating the better things than making the last minute decision and regretting the entire, Italian hero that you ate and then you're just not doing anything in the afternoon. Whereas if you had just done some planning, now all of a sudden your afternoon's much more productive because you ate something that is in tune with whatever it is that you would actually need.
And it saves you money.
And
it saves a lot of money. We throw out a ridiculous amount of food. And if you're doing takeout frequently or doing fast food frequently, stuff ain't cheap.
Right? Yeah, it adds up.
It does.
Marissa, this is amazing. This is very helpful. It's always the questions that we want to ask, but we never ask. And we get frustrated when we're trying to do something. And it's all of this kind of stuff. So thank you. Thank you for everything you added. I like to end every episode with a book recommendation. I don't know if you prepared a book recommendation or not, but do you have a book that you would recommend to people either on this topic, on any topic, a book you enjoy? What's your favorite book? It doesn't matter, but what is your recommendation for people on something to read?
It's hard to pick just one, but I think my latest kick has been Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
He is, not just because he's a Rutgers alum, go Scarlet Knights, but he has written a couple of books. His first one is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Okay.
And it really is about a lot of what this conversation was. In other words, deciding on a quality of life and figuring out what matters and how you want to move through the world, and then taking those steps to bring yourself into that reality. And the beauty of him, he's got a terrific story, but the beauty is that he marries science with that whole psychological concept, because he runs these sessions, but he's doing brain scans of people as they are making these changes. And so it's really fascinating stuff. So that's my shout out. As far as a food one, though, I'll give you a bonus. There's a book called Chasing Cupcakes by Elizabeth Benton.
Okay.
And it is a really fascinating book. I love her approach to weight loss. Now, she had disordered eating patterns, so it's a little different, but her approach really is applicable to a lot of people. And she does focus a lot on the underlying psychological things that get in your way. And it's more of a coaching book than an actual weight loss book. But I recommend that one a lot to people, because I think she really has some very, very good insights. And
look, who wouldn't? If you had to chase something, it might as well be a cupcake.
It might
be good. Marissa, thank you so much. That's right. This is great. Everybody tune in. Come to Bellwether Hub. I'm going to have all of Marissa's information. Reach out to Marissa. She's got everything that you could possibly need in terms of this, and her background and her website and her LinkedIn and all that good stuff. So reach out to her for anything. Marissa, a pleasure as always. Thank you
Jim,
for your wisdom.
It was my deep honor. Thank you so much.
And everybody, listen, make changes, be intentional with your changes, and I look forward to seeing everybody soon. Thanks for paying attention.